My father, who was well liked by everyone in the town, began to treat me in ways that no daughter should ever experience when I was just 12 years old. However, that wasn't the worst. When I was 16 years old, I noticed him coming toward the tiny bedroom where my younger sister, who was 7 years old, slept. At that moment, I concluded that his death was necessary to put an end to that hell on earth. The decision was not made in a moment of panic. Something frigid that gave me a confidence that never left me and ran down my spine like ice water. Either my baby sister's innocence or his life was at stake. And I had already witnessed and experienced enough suffering to know that Henry Caldwell, the miserable man I called father, would not be missed by the world. People in this area call me Miss Ellie, although my name is Grace Carter. I'm 83 years old, and while I'd rather forget some of those years, I'm thankful for many more. In Millbrook, Alabama, where I was born, good electricity was scarce. Would you please click the subscribe button for me before I continue with my story? This elderly woman would undoubtedly value it. I rarely share my tale. It took me more than 60 years to get the courage, for heaven's sake. Additionally, I'd hate for you to miss the other real-life accounts of women who, like me, have survived fire and emerged stronger. Now go ahead. Hit that button. I'll wait in my rocking rocker right here. I hardly recognize myself as the messy braided little child I used to be when I look in the mirror today. What I see is an elderly woman with hands covered in blue veins that tell tales of hard work, wrinkled skin that has seen more sun than it should, and white hair that is nearly always tucked up in a bun. I inherited my mother's pale blue eyes, which are uncommon in our area. I've witnessed enough evil to be able to spot it before it even opens its mouth. Thank God, I have earned this modest small house in Savannah, Georgia, where I currently reside. I have a garden full of flowers and herbs, and I have a porch with rocking chairs where I spend my afternoons. Tell me your name and where you're currently watching, please, my love. Just leave it in the comments. I adore picturing my voice getting to areas these elderly legs can no longer go. Who knows? Even someone from Savannah is watching, or even someone from Millbrook, where I grew up. We could have some cornbread, which I still cook myself, and some sweet tea. You know, I'm one of those grandmothers who still knows how to cook. An ancient pot makes the best food, as they say. Even though my clothing are simple, they are usually well ironed. I always make myself look nice before I leave the house. I'm not dead yet, honey, even though I'm getting old. I don't want to return to the awful life I had. Life has given me unexpected gifts as well as difficult lessons. I established the New Dawn Center 35 years ago. It all began when I took in the first girl who came to my door in the middle of the night, fleeing from her stepfather in a back room of my house. I recognized myself, but I didn't have a place to flee to, but this girl did. More than 500 abused girls have found refuge at the facility today. Maybe these 500 souls won't have to endure what I did or go through what I endured. This is something I've never discussed publicly. I've kept this narrative for over 60 years. It's so serious that, with all these facts, not even my late husband really understood it. He felt that I wasn't telling him everything. When I would wake up screaming in the middle of the night from nightmares, he could see it in my eyes. However, he respected my silence and was a good man. He never pushed, though he may have suspected. Only he demonstrated to me that not all guys are evil. I miss my elderly man so much. After holding my tongue for so long, it's difficult to open the bottle of the past. To relieve this burden, it might be time to tell it. I am now 83. What else are they able to do to me? I've learned from life that monsters, not victims, are protected by quiet. And perhaps by sharing my story, a girl will be able to avoid going through what I did, or at the least, realize that she is not alone and that other women have been through similar experiences and are still alive. My early years in Millbrook were completely different from modern life in the large cities. In a small town where everyone knew one another, the most dreadful secrets are kept under wraps of courteous smiles and back pats during Sunday services. Henry Caldwell, my father, was the owner of Johnson's General Store, which sold a variety of goods, including food, cloth, kerosene, and tools. He was the type of man who people trusted, respected, and referred to as Mr. Walter. He exuded warmth and smiles in front of everybody. When the door closed at home, he changed completely. The house behind the business was where we resided. Although it wasn't particularly noteworthy, it was superior to many homes at the time. My parents had a bedroom there, and my sisters Anna and Emma and I shared a bedroom. Anna, a shy girl with eyes that were always scared, was 2 years younger than me. The infant, Emma, who was 7 years younger than me, was a happy, chatty youngster who was the only one who could make my father grin. Ruth, my mother, was a delicate person in every way. She was constantly ill with what doctors used to term a neurological disorder, but I now know it was depression. She stared blankly for days while taking medications that left her in a daze. On good days, she prepared chess pie that smelled like chess pie and was affectionate. She hardly recognized her own daughters on bad days. Life gradually dimmed her, like a candle melting without anyone noticing, even though she was attractive and had blue eyes like mine. Our life revolved around the general store. I was there more often than I was at school. I only attended enough school to master the fundamentals because my father thought that too much education ruins a girl. He genuinely wanted me to learn how to manage the company, interact with clients, and perform computations. And that's where everything was going wrong in the store. It seems like yesterday to me. I was 12 years old. The afternoon was late. We still had work to do, but the business was already closed to the public. I helped close the cash register practically every day when my father requested me to. As was often the case, my mom was bedridden. Anna had gone to the well to get water. Emma was a newborn. The store was silent, just the two of us, and I could still feel the pressure in my chest when I smelled the coffee, kerosene, and molasses. "Daughter, come here." He patted his leg and said, "Sit on Daddy's lap." It struck me as odd. I was no longer a small girl who sat on laps. However, I did as I was told. I always did as I was told. I was taught early on that defying my father would undoubtedly result in a beating. However, I noticed a change after I sat down. His hand was not motionless. It began at my legs, continued upward without pausing, and touched me in ways that made me feel humiliated and unclean. I froze within, knowing it was bad but not really understanding what was going on. He held me tight when I tried to stand up. "Listen up, girl," he whispered in my ear, with a bourbon scent I hadn't previously detected. "Your mama's going to have such a bad nervous spell she'll die, and it'll be all your fault if you tell anyone about our little secret." He didn't go all the way that day. He released me, shaking and bewildered, but that was only the start. He always managed to get me alone in the weeks that followed. It started out as touches before getting worse. I would weep in private, unable to comprehend what I had done wrong to merit this. On one of the few occasions when my mother was lucid, I attempted to tell her. "Girl, you're making this up," she said. "Your dad is a decent guy. He's a blessing to us. A lot of women in this area are unable to claim the same." She murmured that, and then took another of those drugs that made her look at nothing. I eventually got better at hiding and could tell when he was feeling that way by his appearance, the way he stroked his mustache, and the softer tone of his voice. Soon after, Anna too became a target, so my sisters and I devised a silent warning system. The first time, she was just 7. I could tell by the way she returned silently and with faraway eyes from the store that day. That's how I would get, so I recognized it. She started to cry quietly as I gave her a hug without saying anything. Words were not necessary for us to comprehend what had occurred. We struck a quiet agreement from that point on. We always made an effort to stick by one another, to alert one another when father was around, and to never leave him by himself with Emma. The only pure thing we had, the little one, was the life of the house. We would stop at nothing to keep her safe. As the years went by, things simply got worse. My mother became more and more dependent on her medications, and she hardly ever participated in family activities anymore. I would occasionally catch her staring at us with an odd expression, as though she was aware of what was going on but was powerless to stop it. At other occasions, when we tried to tell her, "Girl, I don't want to hear any lies from you," she would expressly push us away. In town, your father is well respected. We ought to be appreciative that he looks after us. It seemed as though she would rather conceal herself behind her medications than confront reality. Perhaps that's just what it was. With 3 young kids, she had nowhere to go and no strength. She was totally reliant on him. Pretending not to see was simpler. I came up with the idea to flee with Anna when I was 14 years old. Over the course of months, I was able to conceal the pennies and nickels I had saved. We were going to Montgomery, where my mother's sister lived, and I packed little bundles with necessities. Although we had never visited, we were aware of the address because she occasionally sent us letters. The idea was to leave at sunrise, hitchhike with a truck driver, and do something risky. Now I understand. However, that appeared to be our only option at the moment. However, my father found the packages under the bed the night before we fled. How he suspected was a mystery to me. Perhaps he saw the missing cash. Perhaps Anna and I were whispering to someone. That was the worst beating we had ever received. First the belt, then the handle of the broom. He yelled that we weren't thankful for the food, shelter, and clothing he provided. We expressed our gratitude to him in this way. He battered us until he was exhausted, leaving us with red and purple scars. I developed this scar on my chin at that time. He slapped me with his ring-wearing hand as I attempted to shield Anna from a belt attack. The wound was so deep that it remains to tell the tale to this day. This time, my mother, who typically hid throughout these beatings, experienced a major nervous breakdown that required 2 weeks in the hospital. She was more missing than ever when she got back. Father's vigilance grew after the abortive escape attempt. Alone, we couldn't get anywhere. Church, school, and the well. Someone was always observing. We were essentially detainees. Father made it plain that there would be severe repercussions if we attempted anything similar in the future. I won't waste time beating you the next time. You two are ungrateful brats, and I'll just terminate you both. The worst part was that he continued to be the decent family man, the honest merchant, and the respectable man in public. When the doors closed, nobody had any idea what had transpired. I would appreciate it if you could click the like button down there before I continue with this narrative. I bet that many people won't even have the stomach to watch what I'm about to share since it's so heavy and hard to hear. Only the most courageous will be able to listen to the very end and still give it a thumbs up. Do you have the courage? I'll be watching to see whether anyone can actually handle the story. Around this time, I began taking bookkeeping lessons from Mr. Warren, an older guy who handled the store's books. My father came up with the idea. He saw that I was good with numbers and believed that if I took over this role, he could save money. Mr. Warren was a quiet, kind man who didn't inquire about the black circles under my eyes from restless nights or the marks on my arms. He gently explained everything to me, including how to keep things organized, compute taxes, and record income and spending. He also unintentionally gave me the weapon I would eventually use to get rid of my tormentor. The more I studied the store's operations, the more odd things caught my attention. I saw, for instance, that my father kept 2 sets of books, the real one in which he documented what really came in and went out, and the official one which he presented to officers. Additionally, there was the monthly visit from Mr. Blackwell, a distribution firm owner who was a big man with a scar on his face. My father would become anxious and irritated whenever he visited. After the meetings, which took place behind closed doors, my father would typically drink more than usual and piece together bits and pieces of talks that were overheard behind closed doors and documents that I secretly looked over. I realized that my father owed Johnny a substantial sum of money and that the amount was only going to increase. In a scam that had been going on for years, I also discovered that he was manipulating the accounts in order to pay less than he owed. Above all, I learned that Johnny was not the kind of man you play about with. I had heard tales of people who just vanished after upsetting him. They said that he had ties to Louisiana bootleggers and that his goons weren't scared to get their hands dirty. He was the kind of man who handled issues without consulting the police and in his own way. All of these revelations remained hidden in the recesses of my thoughts, like parts of a puzzle I had not yet realized I would put together. I continued to study, observe, and record facts. I also kept doing everything in my power to keep my sisters safe, especially Emma, who was growing up happy and beautiful without realizing the danger that hung over her. Nevertheless, I knew in my heart that he would eventually look at the youngest. I was all too familiar with the trend. And when I was 16, the day I feared the most arrived. It was one of those sweltering January nights when the heat doesn't go away even after the sun sets. Following a particularly difficult day, my mother had been medicated. In the kitchen, Anna and I were doing the dishes for supper. In our shared bedroom, Emma, who is just 7 years old, had already been put to bed. After supper, I typically sat in the living room to listen to the radio, but all of a sudden I realized my father was not there. My mind sounded like an alarm. I ran silently to the hallway after dropping the plate I was drying. At that moment, I noticed him standing at our room's door, staring inside with that familiar expression that he had when he first gazed at me years ago, at the beginning of it all. The blood in my veins froze. I didn't think it was her or Emma. She was still playing with rag dolls as a young, naive girl. She told her father stories from school and rushed into his arms when he got home from the supermarket because she loved him so much. He couldn't harm her in this way. He couldn't ruin that happiness, that brilliance. I moved forward without thinking. I cried out louder than I meant to, "Daddy." Startled to find himself caught in the act, he turned. I briefly noticed a look of humiliation on his face, but it was soon replaced by rage. He took hold of my arm and pulled me back into the kitchen. With the dish towel still in her hands and her eyes wide with terror, Anna was frozen in place. "Do you think you're spying on me, or what?" He bared his teeth in a growl. I said, "Leave her alone," with a bravery I was unaware I possessed. "Emma is only a young girl. Leave her alone, please." He treated me as if I were a bothersome fly that had to be squished. Then he chuckled, a laugh that chilled me with its lack of humor. "Who will stop me anyway? You? That drug-addled, useless mother of yours? Or will you give the cops a call and tell them what? That revered Mr. Walter, who attends church every Sunday and assists everyone, mistreats his daughters? You little fool, who's going to believe you?" I knew that he was correct. His word was more valuable than mine in our little town. He was the respectable man, the prosperous trader. As the daughter of an unstable woman, I was only a little girl. Even though I knew it would be ineffective, I threatened to shout. He laughed again. "Feel free to scream. Tomorrow, I'll begin with the younger one. I'm going to stop waiting. I'll look after you and the other one after that. You know, accidents happen. Girls don't fare well in social situations. When everyone is asleep at night, houses catch fire. More than anything else, the threat lingered in the air. It would be possible for him. I was aware. Our honor wasn't the only thing on the line. Our lives were at stake. Deflated, I lowered my head. His fingers left red traces on my flesh as he let go of my arm. "Excellent. Now disregard what you saw and return to the dishes. And if your mouth is open." The message was obvious, yet he left the statement open-ended. As if nothing had happened, he went back to the living room after leaving the kitchen and turned on the radio. Anna and I stood silently, doing the dishes in a mechanical manner. But something had changed within me. A conclusion, as clear and icy as crystal, was taking shape. I couldn't sleep that night as I lay next to my sisters in the dark. Everything I knew about Johnny, my father, and the manipulated financial records kept playing back in my head. Slowly, a plan started to emerge. Perhaps I could employ different strategies that a man like Mr. Blackwell would be well versed in, if the justice of males didn't work for girls like us. That night, I made a choice that would alter my life forever, and even though I was only 16, I aged decades. Even if it meant getting my hands stained with my own father's blood, I would do whatever it took to protect my sisters, especially little Emma. But hold on a second. I believe I'm getting ahead of myself. Allow me to transport you back to my childhood home of Millbrook, Alabama, in the 1950s. When it rained, the streets, which were still dirt roads without pavement, turned into mud pits. The majority of homes were made of wood and painted in vivid hues like yellow, green, and blue to enhance the scenery. Ours had blue windows and was white, behind the business. On Sundays after service, the small band would perform in the church plaza with a gazebo in the town center. Women would leave church and gossip about other people's affairs, while men would congregate in front of Hank's barbershop to debate baseball and politics. Until the dinner bell rang, kids ran around playing hide-and-seek and tag. In comparison to other homes in the neighborhood, ours wasn't little, but it wasn't large either. There were 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room, and a back room where Mama could wash her clothing when she felt well enough. When we stepped on the wooden planks that made up the floor, they creaked. Before she became ill, Mama stitched the curtains for the windows herself. The smell of freshly ground coffee and sugar from the market, which filled the entire house, was what most distinguished it. Our clothes, the furniture, and the walls. Naturally, I can still smell that scent when I close my eyes and miss the few pleasant moments of those times. Daddy was a big man with broad shoulders, hair that was usually slicked back with Brylcreem, and a neatly maintained mustache. Even throughout the week, he wore nice clothes. White shirt, polished shoes, and linen pants. He welcomed everyone with a wide smile that revealed his flawless white teeth and strolled with his head held high. He attended church every Sunday, sat in the front row, and loudly sung hymns. He always gave money at town meetings. He would lend supplies from the store to anyone in need, often without charging the poorest households. He would reply that what goes around comes around. God is observing. As if it were a title of nobility, people tipped their hats when he passed by, called him Mr. Walter, and sent their kids to call me Mr. Walter's daughter. He was different at home. He had the expression of someone who is constantly unhappy, as though the food wasn't good enough, the house wasn't clean enough, or the children weren't good enough at following instructions. No matter what, he would beat us. Unfinished homework, shattered glass, and a response he considered snarky. His footfall, the way he opened the door, and the tone of his voice when he called for Mama were all indicators of his moods that I eventually learned to decipher. We walked on eggshells even on the good days, but there were also horrible days. When she was younger, my mother Ruth was a stunning woman. She lighted up the room when she smiled, though I don't remember many instances of her smiling sincere. Like me, she had fair skin that burned easily in the sun, long hair that she trimmed herself, and light blue eyes. According to what my neighbors told me before I was born, Mother was happy and enjoyed singing while working. Then, like a flower without water, she slowly faded. It began with what she referred to as the endless sadness, when she would spend days staring at the ceiling while lying in bed. Then the local doctor's prescription drugs arrived in the form of black, tiny bottles with drops that left her stunned, limp, and staring blankly. She chatted little and slept a lot. She occasionally went days without washing her clothing or combed her hair. She was able to get up, take care of the house, and cook on the good days, which became fewer and farther between as the years went by. She would then cook chess pie, which I adored. When she was done, Mom would let us scrape the bottom of the pan, and the whole house would fill with the lovely scent. It had a creamy flavor with a hint of burnt caramel that gave it a unique taste that set it apart from other desserts. I was never able to eat chess pie the same way after she deteriorated. The secret seemed to have been taken by her. 2 years after I did, my sister Anna came. She was a reserved young woman with large, fearful eyes who seemed to be waiting for something negative to happen all the time. She rarely spoke, rarely smiled, and was terrified by loud noises. She had a unique ability to see everything and comprehend things without explanation from a young age. She lifted objects out of the air. Before Emma was born, when there were just the 2 of us, she was my shadow, always following me about. We had a secret ritual at night. Before going to bed, I would make up stories about distant locations where girls might run freely without fear. Mama was already extremely ill when Emma arrived, 7 years after me. Everyone was taken aback by her. After all this time, No one believed she could still have children. It was a challenging pregnancy. Mama was in bed for much the whole time. However, my newborn sister brought light into the house when she was born. She was a plump infant with inquisitive eyes and rosy cheeks. As she matured, she displayed a strong personality that was outspoken, cheerful, and unyielding. She made up games, sang all day, and inquired about everything. The only thing that could make my father truly grin was her, and she was the life of the house. He was more patient with her than he was with Anna or myself. Just to show her a painting or a story, he would allow her to climb on his lap. He was different with her. I assumed it was because she was the baby and the housewife at the time. I am aware that he was only waiting for the ideal opportunity today. Main Street in Millbrook was home to Johnson's General Store. The name was printed in black letters on a corner structure that had been painted light blue. It featured 3 huge windows shielded by elaborate iron bars and a wide entryway in front. A child could discover a world of wonders within. Floor-to-ceiling shelves brimming with vibrant goods, cans of peach preserves, candy jars, bags of grains, beans, and flour and soda pop bottles. My father served clients at a long, dark wood counter in the middle that had been polished by use. A big brass scale that produced a characteristic sound when weighing goods was located in the right-hand corner. The storehouse in the back had bags stacked to the ceiling, rice, beans, coffee, sugar, flour, and a tiny office where my father kept the money and handled the accounting. It was more than just a store. It was the neighborhood center. People go there for more than just shopping. They want to chat, listen to the news, and seek guidance. My father was familiar with each family's lives and knew them all by name. How is your mother doing? Has her cough improved? Did your son land the Birmingham job? Will this year's crop be successful? There, gossip circulated, marriages and funerals were talked, and politics were debated. Have you heard that the cobbler's son was taken by the Silva girl? They claim that the schoolteacher and the new preacher are having an affair. At 6 a.m., the business opened early, and only closed earlier on Sundays, shutting late at 8 p.m. From a young age, I began to assist by sweeping the floor and organizing the bottom shelves. Later, I helped with customer service, goods weighing, and package preparation. By the age of 9, I was able to take orders, give change, and perform mental math. I was proud when my father said that I had a business sense. He rarely gave me compliments like that. The way Mrs. Garcia gripped her purse while discussing her husband taught me how to read people in the store. How old, sir? Jenkins said that the Pereira girl always arrived with markings on her arms that matched mine, and he lowered his eyes when he asked for more time to pay his money. I discovered that everyone has secrets and that the worst things can occasionally occur in even the most elegant homes when they are closed. I saw the first indications that something was amiss with my father, but I didn't know what they signified. I wanted to hide from him because of the way he stared at me when Mama was ill. The manner in which he began requesting more and more that I assist in closing the register at the store after hours while sending everyone else home. How he started praising my legs and hair, claiming I was turning into a gorgeous young woman. I believed at the time that this was simply his style and that all fathers had to follow suit. I now realize that he was testing me, preparing me, and determining his limits. There was a certain day that I will always remember. I was using a small stool to retrieve some boxes from the top shelf. His hand suddenly touched my waist. He stated he was careful not to tumble, but the hand remained. It remained there, going up and down my side with a little squeeze. I stood motionless, unsure of what to do. He was my father, even if it didn't feel right. Surely he must have known what was right? You're growing up so fast, Ellie, he murmured with that odd smile when I eventually got up and off the stool. You'll be a woman soon. He summoned me to the tiny office at the rear of the store another time. We had already closed, and the day was coming to a conclusion. Mama hadn't left the bed because she was having one of her awful days. To care for her and Emma, Anna had remained at home. The workplace smelled of pipe tobacco and old paper when I walked in. He was counting the money for the day while seated in the large leather chair. He instructed me to sit in the chair in front of the desk and shut the door. He started questioning me about school, the males in my class, and whether any of them had attempted to bully me. He claimed that it was his duty as a father to keep me safe from these threats. He stood up and moved behind my chair, placing his hands on my shoulders as he spoke. I was uncomfortable with the way he started massaging me. After going down my arms and back to my shoulders, his hands began to go down my front. I sprang to my feet at that point, claiming that Anna must be in need of assistance and that I had to go home. In the days that followed, he treated me coldly and assigned me the most difficult tasks in the business, such as lifting large packages or cleaning the dusty warehouse. Then came the day that made all the difference. It was my 12th birthday. The afternoon was late. At that hour, when the sunshine turns orange and peeks through the window cracks, causing dust particles to dance in the air, the business had already closed. Mr. Brooks, the lone remaining staff member, had gone to deliver an order across town. After he departed, there was a thick silence that seemed to engulf everything, and the small bell on the door continued to ring. My father and I were alone in that store, which all of a sudden felt both enormous and confining. He requested me to assist with closing the register, counting the money, and writing in the book as usual. Both of us stood behind the weathered, dark wooden counter. I stretched my neck to grab the cash book while standing on a stool with my feet hanging in midair. As I penned the numbers in that round handwriting of a conscientious youngster, the pencil shook a little in my tiny hand. Even though I wasn't looking at him directly, my father was watching me work with a strange expression that made the back of my neck tingle. He was seated in his chair, the one that creaked every time he moved. That late afternoon, the tick-tock of the wall clock sounded louder. The final sounds of the street were fading outside. His chair creaked loudly all of a sudden. "Daughter, come here. Take a seat on your father's lap,"